Hello, college football fans. Welcome to episode 87 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined as always by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, college football fans.
All right. And we are here today to talk about week 14 of college football, rivalry week, and the big games that happened there, as well as Nebraska's final game against Iowa. And then, of course, the upcoming championship weekend we have to look forward to with all the conference championships. So there's a lot to get into.
There is.
All right. And for those of you out there listening to us for the first time, this is a father-son duo podcast by college football fans for college football fans. And we are here to talk about all things college football related and Nebraska football related, our favorite team. And to that effect, we're going to start with our game against Iowa once we get to our per podcast beverage opening.
There you go. So the name of this beer is Firebrick. It's made by the August Shell Brewing Company, which is the second oldest brewery in the United States, and happens to be from New Ulm, Minnesota, a town where your great-grandmother and my wife's grandma lives, and a 111-year-old woman who has shown the test of time. And by golly, I like to always drink this beer with a little memory of Grandma. So, cheers to Grandma and to the second oldest brewery in America.
There we go. Good old great Grandma's on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. So, starting things off, we'll get into some of our predictions and things. We both talked about the Iowa game, of course, on last week's podcast, and we were both being optimistic and predicting Nebraska victories. I said 31-24 over Iowa, whereas you said 28-24, which turned out to be basically what the final score was, except basically reverse it, because Iowa ended up winning 27-24 on a last-second field goal to win the game.
Right, and I said 28-24 because I figured we wouldn't kick any field goals.
Yeah. Well, hey,
they did. I know
they did, and then the kid we've got there now seems at least solid, not great, but at least he's not missing it.
That is true. And all I can say about that game, Alex, is that it's disappointing. It's kind of par for the course over the last few years, and I'm hoping that this whole period of futility at Nebraska is somewhat behind us now, and that although I am disappointed in this season, particularly because I thought we would be better, the reality is that I've just had to accept that the problems that we have are much deeper than I thought they were, and they go beyond the players. They go to the coaches as well. But we're in this for the long haul with Scott. We're going to have to go through his learning curve and growing pains as well. And so the real focus here for Nebraska needs to be that, again, even though they played like crap and allowed themselves to fall behind, the reality is that they had a chance to win it at the end. And that's just been kind of classic Scott's MO so far in his 2 years. There's an awful lot of games that were winnable. They didn't play well, but they were winnable, and he didn't find a way to get it done.
Oh, yeah.
He and his team.
I thought I saw some stat, like it was like 3 or 4 of our losses this year whereby I combined like 8 points or something like that, just making the point we've had a lot of close losses, and
yeah. Well, we don't know how to win.
Right.
We don't know how to win. We don't know how to do all the little things that it takes to be a winner. And part of that is the culture term that Scott keeps using, but it's also about confidence and about just believing that you can win, right? And that's a challenge that Scott has to overcome, and he needs to learn some things. He and his staff have a lot to learn as well. That I thought he was further along, but clearly he's not. And but the good news is that, I mean, we're putting together an okay recruiting class, and as long as he can retain some of the key anchors to this class that he's already put in place, and they're certainly going aggressively after a number of players that if they can bring a few of those home between now and the two signing dates that occur here in December and February, and we get a solid second recruiting class, or a third, I guess it would be, then next year's team will be just that much more of a Scott Frost team.
Right. Yeah. Now for this game, like I said on the last podcast, I was actually near San Diego in Santee, staying with my uncle AJ, who's been on past podcasts. And we were at the horse track in Del Mar over the weekend. And he was able to pull up the game on his iPad. And so I was watching the beginning of the game, and Iowa was kind of driving it on us. And then when they got the kickoff return for a touchdown, that's where I was like, okay, turn it off. This is same old, same old. But of course, after I turn it off, our defense starts to play better. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they scored a lot in the first quarter, but then they didn't really score any more for like quarters 2 and 3 and most of the fourth quarter, until like the very end. But pretty much the defense stiffened up, and then in the second half, the offense managed to get 2 touchdowns. And we came back around the time we got that second touchdown that tied the game. I saw some of that drive. I was like, okay, well, we've tied up the ball game. We got the chance to win this. The disappointing part, though, was that when we got the ball back with 2 minutes to go, it seemed to me like Martinez and or the coaching staff were confused about what the game plan was. Like, were we trying to go run out the clock to go to overtime, or were we trying to take some shots and try to get some points on the board and win?
Right.
Because we kept calling just kind of conservative running plays, but then Martinez kept running it out of bounds, and the players kept going out of bounds. So it's like we were saving clock by doing that. But then, it seemed like based on the play calling that we weren't really trying to be aggressive,
Right. And I have no answer. I can't explain that away. I mean, it's just another reason that and a long list of examples of the fact that clearly Scott has a ways to go as a head coach, as a play caller, that sort of stuff. When things are going well and he's got the tools that he thinks he needs, I think he's a brilliant play caller because he understands what he wants to try to accomplish. But right now he was playing with a quarterback that doesn't give him all the options that he wants to have. And so that's going to be one of the critical things, frankly, in this offseason is, we went in the last offseason with the assumption that we had a surefire, starter until his career was done at Nebraska in Adrian Martinez. Now I think we go into this offseason with some genuine question marks about open quarterback competition, and may the best man win, because Adrian did not perform over the course of this season in a way that would suggest that he deserves to get the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, from the very get-go, especially given the fact that there's a couple of players behind him who've performed quite well when given the opportunity, relatively speaking, certainly as well as he did. And now we're going to have an additional player brought into the fold as well, who may very well, I know he got injured, the young man who's coming on in our recruiting class, but is a very talented player as well, and will come back raring to go as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the good news is we finally have a quarterback room with some real talent in it. The bad news is that Adrian, who we thought was going to be a real difference maker and a potential all-conference type performer, fell completely on his face as a sophomore. And hopefully it's a sophomore jinx, and an off season of weight training and confidence building will bring us back to the good, decisive player that we saw as a freshman.
Yeah. Well, I saw AJ was complaining about the fact that Joe Burrows, who, over at LSU, was a
Yeah.
Nebraska kid and was actually kind of on our radar, but Scott
Oh yeah.
purposefully went after Adrian Martinez as kind of like his guy and didn't really look at Burrows much. And now, of course, he's, potentially going to win the
Well,
Heisman.
I think that's overplayed a little bit as to what our real opportunities were, and understand that he's talking about a graduate transfer situation for a player that only had 2 years of eligibility left. That was fraught with potential risks. Now, of course, 2020 hindsight, you could look at it and say, well, Joe Burrows has gone to LSU and done great things, but the reality is that if Joe Burrows was going to be part of the Nebraska program, the time for us to have aggressively pursued him would have been when he was coming out of high school, because we probably could have gotten him then. But Tim Beck was our offensive coordinator at that time and quarterbacks coach, and he was not interested. Now,
Yeah.
ironically, in that whole story is Tim Beck ended up being his quarterback coach at Ohio State.
Right.
Because that's where he ended up after he got fired at Nebraska. So, and so he ended up coaching Burrows.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. Well, and I won't go into it much, but one of the coaching stories is that Tim Beck was fired at Texas this past
yeah,
week. So,
yes, I know. I know.
hopefully the coaching world is waking up.
And it's interesting though. Speaking of that, that there's going to be a lot of conversation among Nebraska fans, of course, about what kind of changes need to be made at Nebraska, because clearly the performance of a number of areas of our team was horrible this season, and you have to question whether you got the right guy or not. I mean, I question the capability of our defensive coordinator, for example, our special teams coach, who I know, struggled because he was battling, illness. Right, he was battling his cancer for some of the off season, but the other coaches were supposed to step up and take over that those roles, right, while he was battling his cancer. Nobody stepped up, and our special teams were awful. And I'm not just talking about the kicker. I'm talking about coverage units, punting, you name it. All of it was shit. And so you got to question whether those coaches are the right coaches. And you see guys like the Texas coach, who really hasn't been at his program that much longer than Scott has, firing coordinators right and left, and making the changes he needs to make to hopefully move in his mind in a positive direction. I don't know. Scott's got some tough decisions to make.
That's right. Yep. So end of the season for Nebraska. Unfortunately, we will not be going bowling. That's what was exciting about this game, was if we had won, we would have been able to go bowling.
Right.
So kind of another disappointing season for us. But we did see signs of improvement in certain areas. We got one more win than last season, and I saw a lot of the players playing hard out there, at least against Iowa. Even if some of the play calling wasn't the best, but they
right. I mean, we played admirably in the last three games. We played good against Wisconsin, good enough that we could have made things interesting if just a couple things go our way. We obviously looked sharp and opportunistic in our game against Maryland, and then we looked good against Iowa. So at times, right? I mean, there, like you said, there were things to hang your hat on a little bit, but overall, no. I can't describe it as anything other than a disappointment.
Yeah. All right. So getting into some of the other games of rivalry week, of course, there's the legendary Ohio State-Michigan game, which we had to look forward to. And we both predicted an Ohio State victory. I said 35-24. You said 42-21. But it turns out neither of us were giving enough credit to Ohio State, because they ended up winning 56-27. It was closer early on, but once I think Ohio State kind of pulled away in the second quarter and never looked back.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Early on, it looked competitive, and Michigan was hanging in there, and then just the crazy talent that Ohio State has just kind of separated them.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there was an interception or something
Hmm.
that kind of turned the momentum, and yeah, Ohio. I didn't watch much of the game after that point. I just kind of looked at the score, but yeah, not too surprising to me. Uh, uh, I know that I don't doubt. I wonder if you talked to Mr. Clower all about that, but I'm sure.
Oh, I did. But again, I mean, you can look if you're Michigan, you can look at your season overall and say, yeah, it's disappointing, but you kind of understand what's going on, and you beat Michigan State, you pounded Notre Dame, you know, and you and so other than the Wisconsin loss and the Ohio State loss, you're making progress, and so you can feel good about it. And Michigan's got a phenomenal recruiting class put
Well,
together now.
sure, but they
So
always do.
yeah, I know, that's true.
Yeah, I mean that's the part of the problem is that Harbaugh has all this talent there, and yet he hasn't been able to make it be
Right.
there when it
You
really
know,
counts.
they have not won the division since Maryland and well, they've never gone to the Big Ten championship since we had a 12 team league
Right.
since Nebraska joined, I guess.
Right. Yep. It's been.
They've never played for the conference championship game.
Yep. It's been all Ohio
I I,
State, Penn State.
I find that hard to believe. That's amazing. Well, even back when Legends and Leaders divisions.
Right. Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, it was Wisconsin, right? That was winning, and us. We played one of those. Well, no, I don't remember. I don't remember who won those. But anyway, bottom line is, it's been a long time.
Right. That is true. That is true. And then, of course, there was the Minnesota Wisconsin game to decide who was going to go for the west side of the league
Mm-hmm.
in the Big Ten. You predicted that Wisconsin would win 35-28. I predicted that
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota would win 35-28, thinking that they would surprise people. But that's not how it turned out. Wisconsin won
Yep.
38-17.
Yep. Yep. And really, they won that game. Kudos to Wisconsin. They are a program, and until somebody knocks them off, they are the class of the West. There's just no doubt in my mind that is the case. And until somebody proves differently, I'm going to kind of have that mentality, and it's up to Nebraska to climb that mountain and make it happen. I'll be very curious to see what happens with Minnesota next year, because they've got a lot of players that they nurtured through the tough years to get to this year so that they could have this level of success. But now the question is, can it be sustained?
Right. There was actually a Wisconsin fan at Del Mar who was watching the game, and I talked to him a little bit, and obviously I was like, "Well, you guys, beat us pretty good." He's like, "Yeah, but I'm worried about us against Ohio State. I think we're gonna get our butts kicked again, because they've already lost to them once this season."
Right, but you know what? You get a chance. That's all you can ask for is the opportunity.
That's true, and I think typically in those sorts of rematch situations, the mental edge tends to go to the team that lost before because they have more to prove.
Well, yeah, and they're more likely to make more dramatic changes to a game plan, right? Ohio State's going to evaluate and say, okay, we're gonna basically do what we did last time and tweak a little here and there, whereas Wisconsin, if they're smart, will try to some more dramatic changes to their game plan to see if they can surprise Ohio State and kind of change the whole tenor of the game, right?
Yep. Yep. And then, of course, there was the Iron Bowl, Alabama Auburn. I predicted that Alabama would win 38-21, and you went for the upset, saying that Auburn would win 24-21, which ended up being the case, although you're being a bit conservative on your score.
On points,
Because,
yes.
yeah, it ended up being quite a score fest, and Auburn won 48-45.
Yes. Hey, but you know what? I had a good week on predicting the winners, and even margin. But not total score, just margin.
Just
So
margin, just margin.
yeah,
But
I mean,
no, that's true. You did good there, and I did get to. They had that game playing, and I started paying more attention to it once I saw that because Alabama was winning, and then Auburn kind of went up, and it went back and forth there for a bit. But when I saw Auburn was hanging in there, I was like, oh, this is getting interesting. And I've watched a full recap of the game, of all the big moments. So I saw the field goal at the end that doinked off the
yeah,
pole, and then the illegal substitution penalty that ended the game for
right,
Alabama.
right. That's crazy. Here's the thing: with all the incredible talent, all the NFL talent that Alabama has on their roster, and particularly on their defensive roster. How are they giving up 48 points to Auburn? I don't understand. I think Coach Saban is probably going to be making some additional changes. He just revamped his whole coaching staff. I mean, he had a plethora of changes last year, and I think he's going to be making some more in this offseason because he does not have patience,
Mm-hmm.
and that is not going to sit well, giving up that many points to Auburn.
Yep. Well, I was watching a little bit of ESPN on YouTube afterwards, and they were saying remember when Alabama had elite defenses, and in their
Exactly.
they're the only ranked opponents that Alabama played on their schedule, which were LSU and Auburn. They gave up 40 plus points.
Right. And that's the thing. Alabama doesn't. I mean, and that's kind of the deal. During this stretch run where they've won some national titles, yes, they ended up winning the games that mattered, but they do it by avoiding, frankly, some of the tougher paths and remaining undefeated or with a single loss that kind of keeps them in the conversation, and then they slip in. That's why I'm so thrilled with this result because it guarantees that they're not slipping into anything and they are out of this deal. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thrilled. It makes me very happy.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was bummed about the Iowa loss, but then AJ was just as we're leaving Del Mar, he was narrating the end of the game because we couldn't, I couldn't watch it because I was driving the car,
Right.
and yeah, that was good. That was good to hear because, like you said, now Alabama can't get into the playoff in pretty much any circumstance.
Right.
And think they were saying that Gus Malzahn now has he's won 2 of the last 3 games against Alabama.
Yep. Yep.
So
Exactly.
yeah, he's proven to be a challenge for them.
Yep. Well, and Georgia, has outperformed Alabama only to have Alabama come back and beat them at the wire here a couple times, right? So even that matchup with his former assistant is not going so great, even though he won the games. I mean, the formula is out, so to speak, and
Right.
I think those are good signs.
Right. Though it's worth noting that with although Auburn played well, it was more about Alabama's mistakes because they threw 2 pick sixes, one of which was right as in the end zone as they were scoring. The guy took it back the full 100 yards.
Yeah,
So that's
that
one of
was
those.
something.
If they had Tua in there instead of this backup,
Right.
the game might turn out differently.
Yeah, you're right. I don't care how it happened. I really don't.
All right.
Just glad it did.
I'm happy about it too. So that led to the playoff rankings coming out this week, and now we're getting to the point where the playoff rankings actually matter. Now that we're here near the end, and Alabama dropped from 5th all the way down to 12th, below Auburn at 11, Penn State at 10. Which I thought that was good to see that the committee acknowledged that their strength of schedule, having lost the 2 games that really mattered, does not stack up.
Right. I agree.
So that leaves our ranking as number 1, Ohio State, number 2, LSU, number 3, Clemson, number 4, Georgia, stayed the same, number 5, Utah, number 6, Oklahoma, number 7, Baylor, number 8, Wisconsin. So I found that kind of interesting that Utah is currently above both Oklahoma and Baylor. But of note is the fact that the team Utah is playing, Oregon, is ranked 13th, whereas number 7 Baylor, number 6 Oklahoma will be playing each other in the Big 12 championship. So I think whoever wins that Big 12 championship, depending, of course, on how scores for the games both go, which team looks better and stuff. But I think the Big 12 champion has a better chance of stepping forward into that potential 4th spot because of the strength of schedule of that stronger victory in the championship game.
I would agree with you. I think the writing is on the wall that the winner of that game is going to get the 4th spot unless one specific circumstance happens. Georgia beats LSU, 21-17 or 24-21 in an epic battle for the SEC championship. Because if that were to happen, I could see a scenario where Georgia moves to number 2 and LSU drops to number 4.
Now we've had, obviously we've been scared of this whole Alabama scenario because that's played out in the past, getting 2 SEC teams in. But that was with Alabama sitting out of their championship game, and not playing anybody championship weekend. We've never had a scenario where the championship game loser still gets in.
No, I agree. But I guarantee you, there's already dialogue. There is conversation on internet boards and stuff about that scenario. So the fact that there's conversation about it leads me to believe that it's something that will be considered. I don't want it to happen. Trust me. You know me, and I've vented on this podcast of ours about that.
Yes. No, I'm well aware, and I agree with you. But I think the other scenario is if, say, Oklahoma or let's say Baylor beats Oklahoma, by like 3 points in some sort of ugly, close game.
Right.
Whereas, and then Utah goes out and just destroys Oregon, beats them by 30 points. Now that the difference between the performances in those games might be enough to get Utah in there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Although, like you said, strength of schedule. The problem is that, if you look at where other teams are ranked, you know what I mean? As far as ranked opponents, who has Utah played, who have they beaten, et cetera, et cetera. Arizona State having the kind of season that they had probably helps Utah a little bit in that. But the bottom line is that, Utah has got to win that game, and they got to win it convincingly. Mm-hmm. And then, like you say, the Big 12 would have to be kind of an ugly game where neither team looks that impressive, either a real high-scoring game where there's no defense being played whatsoever, or a really low-scoring game where that's lots of turnovers and just futile play. That's the scenario that would need to play out. But otherwise, I think Oklahoma Baylor winner is going to be the 4th in the choice.
Well, and I'll say of those two you just described, it would have to be the low-scoring game option because I think recent experience has shown that people don't care if it's bad defense because people care more about offense.
Yeah, you're right. That is certainly you're right. Yeah. That has been the history, even though I would argue that in terms of identifying the team that's more likely to be competitive in a college football playoff scenario, teams that demonstrate fairly consistently that they don't have good defense seldom end up becoming champions.
Yep, I would agree. That is true. I was just perusing Utah's schedule, and you're right. Since the Pac-12 in general is a little weak this year, they don't have a lot of like marquee wins on their resume, and they lost against USC earlier in the year. Right.
Well, of course, Oklahoma lost to
Kansas State.
Yeah, exactly. So
and it was a close loss too. It was 30 USC, 23 Utah. So that may play a factor too. It is an ugly loss for Oklahoma.
Yep. But conference championship where you're beating number 7 is better than conference champion beating number 13. Okay. So that will mean more.
Okay, so you think if everything plays out as predicted, Ohio State wins, Clemson wins, LSU wins, then those three are clearly in, and then Utah wins and Oklahoma wins, in equalish measure, then it would be Oklahoma getting the fourth spot to
I
go in.
do. I do believe that will be the case. Yes.
Right.
Now, if Baylor wins instead, so now that evens up their series, right? Baylor's only loss was to Oklahoma, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So that actually kind of helps Baylor,
I agree.
especially given how the first game played out, right? You remember that game, how Baylor had a lead and then
Right, choked
blew
it. Yeah. Yep.
So I think in either scenario, that Big 12 team has a very good chance of leapfrogging Utah.
Yep. I would agree with that. And honestly, part of me would prefer Baylor to win just because Oklahoma's been in it so many times in the past. It'd be nice just to see something different.
It would be nice, but I would also say that they're going to be, my perception is they will be a distant fourth in that group, of the other three teams,
Right.
LSU, Clemson, and Ohio State. I mean, I think whichever one of those Big 12 teams is going to be at a bit of a disadvantage.
Right. I would agree. Yeah. Well, whoever gets in the fourth spot, I think those other three teams are the clear favorites. Now, Clemson's playing against Virginia, who is 9-3. And they did beat Virginia Tech this past weekend. But I think most people would agree that if Virginia were to win that game, that would be a major upset. Would really throw the voters for a loop, the committee for a loop. But I think that's very unlikely to happen. Georgia LSU is obviously the bigger game to watch. Number 2 versus number 4. And whoever wins there is clearly going in. And Georgia's only loss was to South Carolina earlier in the year, which was, not a good loss for them.
No, and unexpected, but kind of a weird loss, right?
Right. I personally, I really liked what I saw out of LSU and Joe Burrows in that game against Alabama. So I personally do kind of hope that they win, and get in so we can kind of, see the best of the best go up against each other. And then, of course, Ohio State, Wisconsin, we already talked about a little bit. Ohio State beat them pretty well earlier in the season when they played. But once again, Wisconsin has that chip on their shoulder, if they can change their game plan enough and go on this momentum of beating Minnesota, maybe they can make it interesting.
Yes, and that would if they can line up and shorten the game and get Ohio State nervous, because the thing that with Ohio State is they've really not been tested. If Wisconsin is within striking distance, late in the game, Ohio State could choke and do some uncharacteristic things that they haven't done before because they simply will have not been in that situation. I mean, that quarterback Fields has not experienced that yet. And so who knows how he'll respond.
Right. Well, and people will remember that the Penn State game, they did play kind of unexpectedly sloppy, made some mistakes that let Penn State kind of stay with them. So I think Wisconsin will be aiming to, get a key turnover to,
right,
and that might be the difference that they need to get them over the hump.
Exactly. That's why they play the game. They roll the ball out there, so that you have to play the game to earn it.
Right, but let's say Wisconsin upsets Ohio State, but then everything else plays out as we expect. So then, okay, Oklahoma's definitely in. But then does Wisconsin get in over Utah when they have 2 losses and Utah only has 1?
I would say that they would. That's a great question, and now you start talking about debating quality of wins, because Wisconsin, yes, they've got 2 losses, but they also have really good quality wins against Michigan and against Ohio State, the number 1 ranked team in the conference championship game. and Minnesota, who's a 10-2 football team. So all of a sudden you start looking at the quality wins that Wisconsin has, and you can overlook, that they lost, a couple of close games to other teams. You know what I mean? I
Right.
mean, the Illinois loss is ugly.
Yeah.
But Ohio State, that's an acceptable loss.
Yeah. No, the Ohio State
So
loss is acceptable. The Illinois one is the one that might
right, that would be ugly. But
ugly.
then you have to counterbalance that against beating Michigan, beating Ohio State, beating Minnesota. You know what I mean? I mean, beating Iowa.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah.
so I think Wisconsin would have a pretty strong argument if the choice was, between them or Utah.
Right.
I think for sure the Big 12 champion would definitely be in at that point. And let's say if it was Oregon,
Right.
if it was Oregon that beats Utah and Wisconsin, then Wisconsin's in.
Yeah.
Uh,
Agreed.
uh, um, and then that's where the scenario where LSU being considered, or excuse me, no, I'm sorry, LSU would have won in your scenario. So never mind.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah, I was gonna say, since you were doubting if Utah would get in just if Wisconsin won, then definitely if Oregon upset Utah, who is also a 10-2
yeah,
team but has
right,
a more spotty track record, then yeah,
right,
Wisconsin would definitely get in.
definitely get in.
The last bit I'll say about the playoff that I think is interesting is if everything plays out like we expect, Ohio State will have beaten number 8 Wisconsin, but then LSU would have beaten number 4 Georgia. So, do you think that would be enough to catapult them to being number 1 over Ohio State?
I see what you mean. That's a great question. That's a great question. I think that's where margin and what they look like is going to matter, as to whether or not they flip those two for the final rankings that determine the matchups
Mm-hmm.
for the bowl games. Yeah. I think if LSU dominated Georgia, and saying Ohio State struggled in their rematch with Wisconsin, meaning that it was tighter, then I would say there's a reasonable chance that LSU would jump over Ohio State on the ranking side, and ultimately would end up with the number 1 seed, and OSU would have to play Clemson, and LSU would get Oklahoma.
Right.
In this scenario, most likely.
Right. And I do think that choice of ranking could prove to be significant because
Oh yeah,
as we said, the whoever the 4th team that gets in, we perceive them as being quite a step down from the other teams, and Clemson is
right.
the defending national champion, so I don't think anybody
Exactly.
wants to play them.
No, I mean Clemson's been there, done that. They know how this thing works, and there's something to be said for the experience of having been there before. So yeah, I tell you what, I in fact I would give Clemson, no matter if they remain 3rd in the ranking system, I would still give them a pretty good shot of making it to the championship game, whoever they play, and giving themselves another shot just because of that experience factor. And they have the talent. They obviously have talent.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they've been there, done that. They know how to prepare, all that, avoid the distractions. And they've got a quarterback who's been there and taken them to the championship last year. So I give Clemson a lot of credit going into this.
Agreed. All right, well, let's get into some predictions then. So, Ohio State, Wisconsin. I'm going to predict that Ohio State wins. I think Wisconsin will change up their game plan and make it a closer game, but I think Ohio State's talent, as they showed in the Michigan game, is just that much better than everybody else in the Big Ten. So I'm going to predict that Ohio State wins, let's say 38-24.
Okay, that's good. I have a feeling that it's one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to get tight and interesting, and Wisconsin is going to pull the shocker, or Ohio State's going to struggle maybe a little bit early, but get their rhythm. And once they do, it's blowout city. And then Wisconsin starts kind of grappling for straws, and Ohio State takes advantage of some mistakes from their quarterback or whatever. And Wisconsin's defense breaks down, and it ends up being a blowout, 52-17 type of score. Of those two scenarios, I'm going to go 52-17 Ohio State.
Whew. All right. Well, let's see. Then, of course, LSU Georgia. Big matchup in the SEC and the highlight game of the championship weekend, just in terms of the rankings of the teams. I'm going to go ahead and predict that LSU wins, but I think this is going to be a close game, could be a great game. And based on that Alabama game, I think it is going to be high scoring. So I'm going to go ahead and say that LSU wins, let's say 45 to, what's 7 points less? That'd be 38 over Georgia.
Okay. I'm going to say that because it's a championship game, those two teams are going to spend some time in the first quarter feeling each other out. I think the score is going to end up being lower, but I would agree with you. It's going to end up being a 7-point LSU victory. So I'm going to go 35-28.
Okay, fair enough. Next, Baylor, Oklahoma. Important game in the Big 12.
Wow.
And once again, this is like the Ohio State game where Baylor lost earlier, but like you said, they were up, earlier on in the game. So that must give them some confidence that, like, if we just don't choke, we can do it again. But at the same time, that might be, bad for the mentality, like, don't choke again. And that's all their guys are thinking about the whole time. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. I will pick an Oklahoma victory, and I think this time Oklahoma's going to take care of business and they'll be comfortable. So it's going to be a 2 or 3 score type of win for Oklahoma. So I'm gonna it'll be high scoring again, I believe. So I'm going to say 48-21.
48-21. All right. I'm going to go ahead and change things up here a little bit. I'm going to predict the upset that Baylor finds it in them to actually get the lead and then hold on to it this time and beat Oklahoma. I think it will be high scoring. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's say 52 Baylor with Oklahoma at, let's say 45.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be we'll see how that turns out. And then we've got Utah, Oregon. I'm going to go ahead and predict that, Utah takes this one, and that they get to represent the Pac-12, even though, I don't think I can't remember the last time that I think they did beat Oregon last year and maybe was the best team last year as well. But, they also got left out. So this is an important chance for the Pac-12 to make it in there, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and predict that Utah beats them badly and makes it interesting for the committee in terms of their choosing. So I will go ahead and say there'll be 42 Utah and 21 Oregon.
Okay. Wow. All right. I'm going to say it's a little closer, or I should say lower scoring. And I'm going to say for Utah to win this thing, it's going to be 31-21 Utah over Oregon.
All right. And then we've got the last championship, Clemson versus Virginia. Like I said, I think, this one is the least interesting of all of them in terms of the game, just because there's such a perceived talent difference. But if Clemson gets caught sleeping, then you never know. That could happen. But with Clemson kind of improving as the season has gone on, and being known for playing some of their best football near the end of the year in this championship time, I have a feeling that they're going to come to play and they're going to win solidly. Let's say 42 Clemson, 17 Virginia.
Okay. Yep. I'm agreeing with your general philosophy on that. I think that for the reasons we talked about, Clemson's going to want to make a little bit of a statement. So let's just bump Clemson up to 52, but the same score for Virginia that you gave.
All right, so you're going big score this time.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess, and here's a fun thing real quick, since we're doing this. Why don't we both predict who we think 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be next week based on our predictions?
Wow. Okay.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to predict that even though I have LSU only winning over Georgia by 7 points, I think the committee will value that win enough, valuing Georgia's strength. They will bump up LSU to number 1. So I'm going to say it'll be 1 LSU, 2 OSU, 3 Clemson, and 4 Oklahoma. Or, well,
Okay.
actually, I'm sorry. I predicted.
You'll say Baylor.
I'll say Baylor because I predicted Baylor would win. So that's my 4.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And then my 4 is going to be I'm predicting that Ohio State's going to win big, ultimately in the Wisconsin game. So I'm going to say OSU remains number 1, LSU remains number 2, Clemson is 3, and Oklahoma is 4.
Yeah. Yep.
And the Pac-12 is screaming that the playoff must be expanded immediately.
Yep. Yeah, I have a feeling yours is the more likely scenario to play out of our two, but but I think either one could be interesting.
Absolutely. And it's nice that we have, this is one of the positives, but it occurred to me as I was watching ESPN promos of the Who's In, moniker thing that they did. And it's because of things like that they've made this whole college football season now boil down to those 4 teams. And it's what's diminished the significance of all bowl games and all the other things that go on in the college football postseason. Mm-hmm. And it's sad. It's a sad reminder to me of what we lost when we started going down this path.
Right.
I'm a traditionalist that would have been happy to stay with the bowl structure, or if we had created a playoff, I would have wanted it to be established with the bowl games as the moniker of it, okay, and expanded it.
Not quite that, because back when the playoff thing was first coming up, and there was all the debate about it,
I was against it.
Or you were, you're a traditionalist, like you said, but you were pretty insistent that if there was a playoff, it had to be 4 teams, not 8. And I know now you've changed your tune on that.
I have, because of the fact that they've not executed according to the criterion that they originally established. They did not follow through on that, and that's a problem. And now that I know that I can't trust the humans, then we have to expand it to be big enough that all the it's going to be ridiculous. I think this is going to be the 3rd year in a row, and maybe the 4th time in 5 years that the Pac-12 has not been included. And the Big Ten has missed it 3 times, and the Big 12's missed it 2 or 3 times. It's crazy how often basically this playoff has been about the ACC, which is a joke. Really, who else is a significant team in the ACC other than Clemson?
Yep.
And yet they find themselves in the playoff every year.
Right.
Because of that.
Right. But it would be people would be questioning that narrative if Clemson got into the playoff and then got their butts kicked, but they've played great, every time.
Absolutely. No, I get it. But my point is that it's not representative of the football being played across the country. And that's why now that you've gone to this playoff thing, you gotta get more teams into the mix.
Yep.
So that everybody's there.
Though if we go to 8, then that will make the bowl games and all the other stuff even less relevant.
Well, unless it depends on what you do. It depends on because they want to control the money, the college football playoff. they go out and market for the championship game, right? And the championship game is not tied to a bowl game, but the semifinals are tied to bowl games, and it's rotated, right? So if we went to an 8-team playoff, my hope would be that it would include more of those traditional bowl games. So those bowl games would start to be relevant again every year, right? So now you'd have 4 bowl games every year that were preeminent bowl games, and they hopefully would be the traditional big bowl games. It would be the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, and the Cotton Bowl, or some version of that.
Right.
The Fiesta Bowl. One of those two would be battling for that 4th spot.
Right. But then in the actual Rose Bowl game between the Big Ten and the Pac-12, right now you have the second best teams usually playing each other every year.
Right. Now every year it would be the
the third best.
The Rose Bowl would be the first round of the playoffs. That's my point. That's what I would want.
Right. Well, so you're saying that because isn't it right now? They do. The bowls that have the playoff host the playoff semifinals there,
right.
But they also play their traditional game.
Right on that day. Yeah. See, I think that would end up being scrapped, and they would redefine the bowl game being played on the whatever the structure is. That's what I think they would.
But the traditionalists in the Big Ten would never let that happen.
Oh, well, they would be right. I mean that's going to be a roadblock. There's no doubt. I think there's enough hankering about us being left out that the traditionalists who want to fight for the Rose Bowl's traditional New Year's Day and all that are going to have to recognize that they have to concede that we've now moved on, and if we want to be relevant, we have to concede that somehow.
Right.
And yeah, you might still have that game, but it'll like you say, it'll be against the third best teams in oftentimes in the league playing each other.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've given our predictions for the championship game, so it'll be exciting to see how it all plays out this weekend. I think the Pac-12 one is on Friday, so that's tomorrow for us recording here on Thursday. So that's exciting.
That is.
Yep. So, it's sad that football is near its end. Feels like it just began, but
I know. It's disgusting.
That's how it always feels, I guess. So I hope you all out there enjoyed listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it, you can email us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can find us online if you search for College Football Throwdown on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Leave us a review there, a comment. We always like to hear back from the fans and read back your feedback on the podcast. So thank you all once again for listening, and thank you, Dad, for hosting with me. And until next week, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.